So here we go again for another standard deck tech for Brothers War metagame, which we assume that will be very impactful once this new set hits the standard format. So for today's deck, we feature probably an updated version of the standard Izzet Delver deck. So if you're familiar with the deck, it's basically board of the spells, counters, tempo cards, bound spells, and combined with red, we have a new, not really a new, but more of the firepower in terms of direct damage and also getting advantage with sweep of red for any creature horde that the opponents may have up. So anyway, we have this deck tech which I was just able to reference with some of the previous Delver deck builds. Maybe that was from the recent MTG events and also in Arena with just a little adjustments in terms of spell choice and also with the lineup of the creatures. So without further ado, here's the build that I can suggest. We have 13 creatures in total, 3 enchantments, 22 instants probably because of we have probably more of the tempo at end of turn setup and 22 lands to act as our mana base for this deck. Now we go with the setup again. We do a little review of what the Delver Secrets does, hence it is called the Izzet Delver deck. So it's a 1+1/1 when you upkeep, look at the top card of your library and reveal that card. If it's an instant or sorcery card, transform it into this one. It becomes an Exile Aberration, a 3/2 flying, which is a very good turn 1 clock. Hence we have 4 in the deck. But it doesn't really matter that we rely on those because we can also go with the late game plan with this setup. So I'll introduce to you again the new card from the Brothers War, which is the Third Path Iconoclast. So this is 1 blue and 1 red, 2/1 human monk that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you'll create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. So this is now the version of the Young Pyromancer card from the older sets, I mean from the older formats, wherein we not only have a 2/1 attacker but also have this army of 1/1 soldier artifact creature tokens. That the benefit here of having artifact is we go with an instant card that we'll discuss later. So aside from doing this army, maybe for champ block versions or just overwhelmed with just your 1/1s, you can also go with the straightforward Haughty Djinn, which again reveals equal to the instant sorcery cards in your graveyard and makes your sorcery spells and instant spells cost 1 less to cast. And also with the flying effect, you can basically do a quick damage in the air from your opponent's life total. And with the late game plan also, we have Tolerant Terror again. This main component of the blue-based mono blue tempo in the current standard. So it also costs 1 less for its instant sorcery cards, and also has Ward 2 aside from being a 5/5 beater in the setup. And also added 1 copy of the mythic card artifact creature Blade Coil Serpent. It's X and 6, wherein for its the blue cast, it enters the battlefield, draw a card, or if you go with the black, its opponent discards a card, and for the red, it gets +1/+0 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. But the benefit here is that you only have 6 powered 5/4, but on how you would pay out this mana is how it ETB triggers will happen. So either you will draw a card or you will get a hasty attacker, or just you can do some combination both. That would depend also on the late game. So maybe you can go with draw 2 cards, gets it +1/+0, trample and haste, becomes a 6/4 haster and trampler, or maybe go with the pump and just draw a card. That would depend on the scenario. But the good thing is that we'll have a creature that is very reliable in the late game, a good mana sink because of only X can pay more than 6 aside from this base mana cost, and also a good attacker by sense. So we don't need 1 copy of this because given that we have only 22 lands, we won't really need this in the early game and just draw it out in the late game. Now for the only 3 enchantments in the deck, we have the Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This is now the staple red saga of the deck because given that Izzet also goes with having those creature shaman tokens to produce this treasure token, or flip out your graveyard by discarding your extra sorcery instance to draw the relevant spells, and then have this reflection of Kijiki do some extra creature tokens that are copy of another target non-legendary creature you control. You can may go with a Hotted Gin in the air copy or go with the Stompy Tolerant Terror. That would depend on how you would set up that late game. So that gives you the variance on how this deck would work out. So that means that you would not really rely on the Delver of Secrets as the main win condition because of these options in the deck. Now we go to instant sorceries. We will divide them into card draws, spot removals, tempo spells, and counter spells also. Now for the spot removals, we have a Braid, 1 copy, 2 copies of Lightning Strike, 2 copies of Blending Flame. Let me just check on this. Okay, that's 1. And 4 copies of Voltage Urge. Why consider this one as a 4 copies aside from the Play with Fire? Because of its ability that you can also have to deal 4 damage instead by sacrificing artifact. As I mentioned earlier, you have your third path Iconoclast as your source of artifact spells, also tokens, treasure tokens from Kijiki's Goblin Shaman token. And with that, basically 7 or 8 sources for the setup, you can basically have the option to go wide with the damage if needed to any other target creature or planeswalker. So you have 4 copies of that. We also again Rending Flame for the 5 mana 5 toughness creatures such as Sheoldred. We have Lightning Strike that can basically use it to get damage to the dome. Only a lone copy of Braid because we would really rely more on the probably on the sideboard to have more destroy artifact effects. So only having 1 copy of this makes you just an option to have cover for your artifact removals and also a bonus of 3 damage if there are not really a good target for any artifact to destroy. So along with that, we have the tempo spells, only 2 Phenom Hope, basically a good one to cast to out-tempo your opponent's creatures, disabling their early assault, and also 4 copies of our Make Disappear, which is our main counter spell for this deck. Given that you have enough tokens, you can basically casualty for 1 to give an efficient 2 to cast or maybe 1 to cast with Healthy Gin to be able to counter any relevant spells. In support of this, we also have 1 copy of Spell Pierce and 1 Syncopate for any late game that can also be good against creature against mid-range decks that goes tap out, or usually they would go tap out for big spells or 5 mana costs. And pertain that you can counter them and also remove them from their graveyard. So in the support again, to have discard draws, we have aside from the Mirror Breakers discard effects, we also have 3 copies of Consider that can also fill up your graveyard and draw your relevant spells, and 2 Impulse. So also dig out 4 top cards of the library. And that's basically your instance. So your lands are basically distributed more for the island because of the heavy casting cost for blue to make your Delver also as consistent as turn 1 with the island. In support of this, also the fixing of Stormguard Coast, Shivan Reefs, and 1 copy of Thunder's Launch that can be cycled in the late game. And of course, our channel lands, Otawara, Dosaling City, and our Second Zan, Crucible of Defiance. So that's pretty much basic about it. We'll check mana cost is basically that's 2.16. Our call distribution is more of the 27 blue and 16 red, but our producers are only 13 and 18, which is still quite viable because we still have our mana fix here, and also our card draws to help us draw into our lands. So that's it. Our tokens that we use in the deck. And if you've ever seen a similar deck build for this, it was on the Izzet control. They also use Hotted Gin and Terror, but they are more on the built-in Bernarda House and also some of the Planeswalkers such as Jaya for this build. But for our deck feature here, we are more on the probably the most aggressive, more of the aggro aspect because of we are aiming to go with the turn 1 Delver of Secrets and help protect them by adding all of these mana costs, your bounce spells, your counter spells to protect it. And if ever, you can also go with the third path Iconoclast setup, just countering the spells and producing all of these army of colorless soldier artifact creature tokens to go with his trigger to whenever cast a non-creature spell, it will go with it. So that's about it. I think this would be a relevant deck now with the Brothers War entering standard in this sense, and we'll see if we can go with a testing of this once we go with a patch of MTG Arena, and do the adjustments also in the video. So stay tuned for that one, and of course check your local standard events if they will ever go with this build, and if you have any suggestions or recommendations on this lineup, you can do so in the comments below. So that's about it for this standard deck tech for Brothers War, the Izzet Delver deck. Thank you for watching this video, and until the next time.